evening, everyone. I am Jason Miles, your host for another episode of Beyond the Red Zone. I was telling Mac as he logged in, I got home from Los Angeles at 5:35 a.m. this morning. Last night I was with Ben Burgess and Ncaa at Ben Burgess's book launch party for his latest book out on everyday analysis. I have a book on everyday analysis. It is now out of print. I don't know why it was the best-selling book. But Ben's new book, 4 Essays on Palestine, is out now. It's a great compilation of essays with a really good, he wrote a new introduction. It's essays that he published, I believe mainly in Jacobin, but we got to do kind of a panel discussion about the book, and time permitted, so we got to do a little bit of a Q&A afterwards. That was fun. And then of course we had after party shenanigans, and then the very long slog home back to Mexico. So I don't know how long Mac and I are going to go tonight. We both said we're not going to do a 3-hour marathon stream. But before anyone makes a joke about my facial hair, I did lose it in a horrible gooning accident. Don't cheer for that. Do not cheer for that. You can laugh for it, but don't cheer for it. Let me bring in my trusted co-host in these sports endeavors. Please welcome Mac.
Gooning.
So I made a clip of we went on longer than I thought we did about the play-by-play, and there's so much within the play-by-play thing. Like, I had forgot about the Gooning League that we were doing the play-by-play for. I think the Gooning League had started doing play-by-play for Brazzers. But anyway, I was like, wouldn't it be funny? Because I had made a clip of you and I talking about the post-game press conference.
Yeah.
The post-nut post-game press conference for old people. We have to add all that in there because it is for old people. Young people would never want to have a post-game press conference because they would all think they were all-stars. Men and women.
Yeah.
But old people know. They need to talk to the press.
You gotta have an honest conversation with the fourth estate, my friend. You have to. You know, like you said, younger people are like, my dick game's strong. I gave her to her good.
Yeah.
You know, you get a couple sentences. You know, the women's like, I clamped on his dick, like, you know, a vice grip, made him nut, you know, like, and it's just like, no, I want an honest conversation, you know, from, you know, Axel, who's been doing this for 23 years. And he's like, you know, we went to dogging, I pulled a hammy. You know, I wasn't at my best.
I can't leg these out anymore, you know.
Yeah.
Off-season workouts are very important. Also, I made a clip from the Anna Kasparian rant, and when I saw Anna, she goes, "I saw your clip." It just showed up on my feed, and the clip is called the Anna Kasparian hate boner industry. And she goes, she didn't know what it was. She was like, "What the fuck?"
But, I mean, there are people who make whole streams about how she's, you know, the second coming of, you know, Satan.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, is she my favorite person? No. And when I don't want to hear her speak, which is like 99.8% of the time, I just don't watch her. And that's a pretty simple
It's, you know,
what
a wacky thing to do. But so anyway, I made a clip of the gooning. Gooning. And by the time I got to LA, I checked my email, and YouTube sent me an email saying this entire thing is being pulled because you have violated all of our standards. And when I was making the thumbnail for it, so for the thumbnail for the old person post post-game press conference, I have a picture of Mia Khalifa, but it's just kind of her pouting, right?
Yeah.
For this, I was like, who's another porn star I could look up that people would know? And I was like, isn't there a woman named Alexis Texas that people know? So I put a picture of her, but for some reason, when I put the picture in, only her butt showed up.
That is amazing.
And so it's just her butt, and it says like, and I called it the PGL, Professional Gooning League. And I thought it was funny. And then I took a picture of Norm Finkelstein that I have, and it's just him going like this. He doesn't want to hear about the gooning. And I thought that was a funny picture. And I was like, maybe people will click it. I don't know. And so I posted the clip, I put it up, and I didn't think anything of it. It wasn't doing crazy numbers or anything. The boner industry clip did way more numbers than all of that shit. Anyway,
yeah.
I got this email and I was like really bummed out by it. And we were talking about like, media suppression during this, very important panel discussion. And I brought up that they pulled down the gooning clip. And Anna's like, what is gooning? And right as I'm about to tell her, Ben goes, nope.
Just be like, Ben, I was going to tell her that Norm doesn't like it. That's
it.
I
was like, Finkelstein doesn't like it. So half the crowd is cracking up. Half the crowd has no idea what gooning is. You can see everybody going, gooning. What is it?
Just see a couple shocked faces. Like,
yeah, it's like a delayed response. It's like, I didn't get. Oh, and I was upset about the. I was upset because I was like, there's so much when I'm uploading stuff, because everything I have moves so slowly from my computers to my erections. Everything I have moves so slowly, and there's videos I'll watch while I'm waiting for shit to upload, right? And it's always, I'm surprised. There's so many videos about like how to grow your penis.
Yeah.
There's a video you can watch about how to stretch your cock out, and it can just look longer when you're not hard. And I'm like, that's a weird thing to want. And how did I find, why is this for me?
Yeah. How did my algorithm pick this?
What was I looking for?
Jason's just like out on the terrace one day, not realizing that someone's burning the most potent weed ever in Mexico, and in a weed-induced haze, he's just looking up like weird shit. How to make my penis look longer, flaccid.
And I'm sitting here watching this video thinking to myself, why am I watching this video? And holy shit, it works. Like, oh, wow. Yeah.
3 inches in 2 weeks, guys. All you need is a 25-pound dumbbell.
Yeah. All you need to do is
some yarn.
Have someone stand on your stomach and then just yank. And then there's all this horrible shit on the internet, and I'm like, here's two guys joking about gooning, and we're using so much kind of euphemisms, you can't really tell what we're talking about unless you know.
Yeah.
And so these were my options. I could take a class, I could take an online class about the policy procedures, or I could challenge it. And I was like, challenge. And so I challenged it. And I went to go show, Ben and them, because after the thing was all over, Anna goes, I still don't know what gooning is.
Well,
and her husband runs up. He goes, honey, I looked it up, and it's you know.
Listen,
he's like, we're not gooners here. We're not gooners here.
It's what we do on Sundays. Okay?
Good old wholesome gooning.
That's right.
And so I went to check. To see if my appeal was heard, because they said, this is what they say. They say, if you appeal these things, someone will physically watch it. And I'm like, I wish I could see the person's face that is physically watching this video. And guess what? They reinstated it. But we can't monetize it. But it's there. It's people can watch it. That's all that matters. People should be able to watch you and I imagine a better world where there is a professional gooning league and we are the commentators.
That's right. I mean, and that's, that's what counts. That's what truly counts. And, we're here for the viewers. I mean, it'd be nice to make a little more money off this, but you know what? That's not why I'm here. Yeah. It's not what a good comrade does. Mm-mm. A good comrade talks sports ball and then makes asses out of ourselves for an hour and a half every Wednesday night. That's what we do.
That's what we do here on Beyond the Red Zone. But that's I figured you'd be excited that we lost and then we kind of won.
And then we won. And that's all. That's what I'm here for. Is throwing a big fuck you to the capitalist system. And yeah, you may have
goon at a time.
Just one goon at a time. Just one gooning session at a time. And I'm sorry. Like, fuck you, YouTube. Like, you. And I mean that. I'm not saying that hypothetically. I wish YouTube. I mean, technically, from Citizens United, YouTube is a person. So it should be able to just get fucked. Like, that's how I feel about it.
No, YouTube does all the fucking. It does all the fucking.
And it's not consensual. So they should go to jail like Harvey Weinstein.
Dude, did you see that the Abercrombie and Fitch guy was doing like Puffy style shit?
It's about fucking time. That was like, dude, that documentary about that guy came out almost a decade ago.
There's a documentary about that guy?
Yeah, man.
There's a documentary about Abercrombie and Fitch, and there's a documentary about the guy.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about it. I knew he was caught up in some like Epstein stuff. Like he was there a lot.
Huh. Wonder why.
But yeah. That was we can talk about that a little later. But I was kind of like, whoa. You might know more about that. Isn't he from Ohio?
I believe so, yeah. Yeah. We're not, Ohio is not batting very well as far as good people these days. Like we gave the world J.D. Vance.
Ugh. Oh, you did.
I mean, technically it's West Virginia, but he spent a lot of time in Ohio.
I thought it was the other way around. I thought it was he's from Ohio and spent a little bit of time in West Virginia.
Maybe it was, dude. I didn't read a shitty book.
The robot revolution will start because YouTube is going to force AIs to goon to every video uploaded. Yeah. I'm excited that we won something like that because usually when we make these ridiculous videos, because I was going to make another video about what was the boom operator's name we were talking about? Gary. That's what I was looking for. I was looking for the Gary, and I found the gooning.
I mean, do we really need to rub more salt into Gary's wound?
I don't know, because rewatching it, just tears streaming down my face. Well, let's get into the topic tonight. The restructuring of college football conferences, once seen as the death nail for tradition in favor of television revenue, is now increasingly viewed as a potential path to financial solvency for many cash-strapped universities. Football and basketball are undoubtedly the largest revenue-generating sports for most Power 5 schools. However, with the growing costs of operating a range of other sports programs, as well as mounting lawsuits related to athletic welfare, universities are turning to private equity and the emergence of a super conference model to secure their financial futures. This shift, as highlighted in recent reports from Yahoo Sports, CBS Sports, and Sports Illustrated represents a radical transformation in how college sports are governed and financed. The prospect of private equity entering the arena of college sports raises significant concerns about the future of higher education and athletics. In the push for profitability, universities risk further commodifying student athletes, prioritizing the financial interests of investors over educational and ethical considerations. College football's more forward oh, move toward a super league reflects broader neoliberal trends in higher education, where financialization undermines the core mission of learning and scholarship. By treating college sports as a speculative market, private equity threatens to erode the principles of amateurism and deepen the commercialization of education, where institutions are increasingly seen as business enterprises rather than public goods. The rise of a super league could also exacerbate inequalities between schools. Smaller institutions that cannot compete financially may be left behind, while wealthier universities consolidate their power and influence over college athletics. This new model reflects a broader societal trend where privatization and the concentration of wealth leave the most vulnerable at risk. As higher education continues to face budget cuts and challenges to public funding, the introduction of private equity into college sports proves poses existential questions about the role and purpose of the modern university. Mac, what say you?
Well, this is what kills me about this entire thing. When you had the first court case involving college, specifically college football,
Mhm.
going to the Supreme Court in 80, I believe it was 83 or 84, where essentially the monopoly of the NCAA picking and choosing who appeared on TV at the time, because you got to think there were only four TV stations, and the NCAA picked and chose what teams would appear on TV. Oklahoma challenged them in court and won. So at this point, the teams are allowed to negotiate a TV deal, right? Well, they're like, we're not getting enough money. Why don't we go with the conference negotiating TV deals and going national, right? So the seeds of realignment as we know it, since like 2000, were planted in the early 80s when, everybody's sitting there poo-pooing the fact that, college football was great because you had regional conferences and they all met up, the best of the best met up during bowl season. Well, when I live in Cleveland, Ohio, and I could see USC on a Saturday afternoon on ESPN, that kind of blows that whole regionality like idea out of the water. Um, and then you started seeing the most successful teams recruiting nationally, right? Like it wasn't just you're recruiting your backyard or your powerhouses like Alabama who could sneak into Florida and take some players. Like you have guys from all over the place. I mean, one of the states that Ryan Day targets is fucking California, right? And that is night and day difference between Ohio and California, right? But I think what's really going to usher in private equity into college sports is going to be the House v. NCAA court case that was just settled. Now, you all can do a bit of reading, but I'm going to summarize this. Essentially, the settlement was that the member institutions of the NCAA will pay student athletes X amount of dollars, right? Now, the universities have to kind of hash out what that dollar amount's going to be. But at the FBS level, which keep in mind, I believe there's now 135 teams that compete at that level. It looks like it's going to be about $20 million. Now, for Oklahoma or USC or Oregon or Ohio State, Florida State, that is chump change. You'll just reach down to the couch cushions and grab that, either in the form of raising student fees or a donor coming through. But what about teams like Tulane, um, you know, Southern Miss, or yeah, so yeah, Southern Mississippi. That's the Golden Eagles, I believe. That's the one that Brett Favre tried to funnel all the money to.
Favre.
But your smaller schools, what's going to happen to them? Because they're not going to have $20 million to pay out to student athletes. And earlier in the month, a private equity firm pitched this idea of a super league where the member schools, and there'd be 70 of the 132 teams in FBS that would be in this league. So essentially the Power Four and plus another, I think 5 to 10 teams from the group of 5 conferences. And private equity will earn 20% of it and back it. So we know that 20% is actually probably a lot bigger, especially if they're putting up the initial round of funding for it, which would break in half, college football as we know it. And, Jason, like we talked about before, this could be the push where we see kind of the athletic departments detached from the schools. And they're just kind of run as standalone bodies. Because at that point, what's the point of having a college if you're just there to be kind of like the nucleus that the athletic program kind of sucks up every bit of funding
Well,
for.
would you agree that there's kind of a branding though with schools, right? Because that's one of the things that in the articles you sent me that they were talking about that private equity would be able to use that brand of Michigan or USC or Ohio State or Alabama or Texas. That being said, we always talk about these mega conferences. I don't feel like they're going to try to totally decouple the sport from the school because they need the school. I don't know.
I mean, do they though? What they need? What
the
they
sport
need
doesn't work on its own.
They need the name,
Yeah,
the team name.
Yep.
So the Buckeyes, the Wolverines, and the colors.
Mhm.
That's what they need.
But you
Because
can't.
let's face it, 80%
Mhm.
of the fans of any college football team have never even stepped foot on campus.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
As long as they have a Buckeyes to go see, as long as they have a Trojans to go see,
Mhm.
people will go. Even if it's your Buckeyes brought to you by Purolator oil filters.
Sure. If there's a sponsor name there, I think people are they don't care about sponsors anymore. I mean, look at the NBA with all those sponsor names on jerseys. It looks like a goddamn NASCAR.
Dude, that's nothing compared to, teams in Europe and Asia.
Well, we're talking about the United States. I don't live there.
America.
Yeah, I don't give a damn about what goes on there. You don't want to make America great again, huh?
No, because I want ads all over the uniforms. That means I'm.
I don't think you can decouple it from the school. I think there is a mystique about college and sports. Even I agree with you 100%. Most people didn't go there.
But
still,
what will beat out mystique and tradition every time? Money. Money will win every time.
You can't decouple the school from the sport totally and say this is Longhorns football in the Black Rock League of you can't.
Dude, we're already going to get that because like private equity is looking at buying 20% of the Big 12.
Sure.
Right. And the Big 12 commissioner, who has been, you can hate him for essentially destroying the Pac-12 as we know it. Right.
It's still, it's rough for me. Can you just be easy when you say that?
Was very proactive. He was like, I'm going to get left behind in the arms race. Right. Like he knew it. And he's like, fuck that. I'll get the best of what's available. I'll prop this league up since we're losing Texas and Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Like he was very proactive. And the thing is, the SEC and the Big Ten, like we've seen them kind of do their big push, like with realignment, right? Like the Big Tens came when they pilfered Maryland and Rutgers and Nebraska all within a year or two of each other, right? And then it was just kind of dribs and drabs, the SEC arguably got the cream, the creme de la creme with Texas and Oklahoma. And that's if Oklahoma ever learns how to play SEC football, which doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime soon. But, the Big 12 commissioner positioned him to essentially take the place of the ACC. Because right now, the ACC is the next one up that looks like it's going to fracture, And if that happens, especially if like Clemson and Florida State, when they're court cases, if Florida State and Clemson leave the ACC, what is going to stop Carolina, Virginia, even Duke from just picking up and going where they want? And at that point, I think that's when you see the SEC and the Big Ten both kind of like start salivating and take big chunks of the ACC.
I mean, I think there's going to be the super conference thing. I don't know if it's good. I don't think it's going to be a good thing, but I do think it's going to happen. Well, because we're seeing it with this season of realignment and the narratives around the games. I've only heard one person kind of talk about the rivalry games being played so early and how they don't dig that. But I don't know if a lot of people feel the same way, since most people kind of their emotions change as media narratives change.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you felt about like the Civil War, Oregon State being played, like was it the third or fourth game of the season?
I mean, the rivalry games are important, right? But like, you look at the Red River Shootout. That
was early.
That was missing for how many years?
I don't know.
And getting the Texas A&M like rivalry kind of rekindled now that everybody's in the same conference again. I mean, rivalry games are big, right? It's just you have to look at it. Most conferences are going to a 9-game conference schedule because the conferences are getting fucking huge, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I wouldn't be surprised to see, maybe down the line, because so many top teams are being concentrated in, a couple conferences. You don't see them move to 10 game conference schedules. Only because like you're going to see a lot of competitive like top games within the conference schedule as it is. Right. I mean, I honestly, like, people like Ohio State people are like, it's got to be the last game of the season, Ohio State, Michigan. I don't give a fuck if it's the first game. I'm going to show up with every bit of Michigan hate I have. And maybe someday I'll, hit my stated life goal of burning Ann Arbor, Michigan to the ground. It just depends. But, it just, I never really sweated that. It's just this idea of tradition, right?
Yeah.
And me spending so many years in the Army, I detest tradition.
Sure.
I think it's just something people lean into because they're terrified of change. And it's like, dude, that's life, man. We are constantly changing and cycling. Like, you've got to be able to semper gumby that shit, always flexible, and the people that aren't are the ones that are bitching and moaning about this the most. Realignment never really bothered me. That was going to happen, especially when you saw that basketball was no longer the driving economic force that it was for so long.
Mm-hmm.
It's college football. That is the straw that stirs the drink. The only thing that keeps the NCAA as a functioning institution is that fucking check from Warner Brothers Discovery for the tournament every year. If they didn't have that, if college basketball was more decentralized the way football was, there'd be no NCAA. The conferences would just hold their own championships, which is essentially all the fucking football playoff is. It's not run by the NCAA. It's run by ESPN and the conferences.
So do you see this as a good thing for college football?
No.
And why? What's the big picture that you see?
This is it'll start at private equity in small chunks, right? Like you said, BlackRock will come in and say, listen, I'm going to give you the Big 12, and we'll just use a number, right? We're going to give you $400 million for 20% of your conference. And that commissioner is going to be like, holy fuck, 400 mil that I can split between my member universities, right? Bet. So he splits up that check, probably gets a bonus if, as well for bringing that kind of finance into a conference that needs it. But what happens when, you know, the BlackRock Big 12, or as I don't know, I don't think it's still Bob Bowlesby. I can't remember the fucking guy's name, but he said we would do the big blank, you know, corporate sponsor. So like the big BlackRock, right?
Okay.
What happens when they ask for a little more, right? Like, hey, you have a very underperforming member in Baylor. We want him out. We want you to bring in another, you know, another team. Well, it's like, bro, there's not a lot to pick from. Like when you're looking at, you know, inventory to replace Baylor with, you know, where are you going to get that team from? Well, we want you to entice Texas back, and we'll give you X amount of dollars to do that. And then we're going to want to up our stake to 30%.
Mm-hmm.
And it will be shit like that. That's what private equity does. That's what venture capital does, right?
Mm-hmm.
They get their inch in, they get their hooks in, and they take and take and take until they own it.
Mm-hmm.
And now we've already seen what happens when private equity starts gobbling up sports. Most minor league teams are owned by a private equity firm now. And they have fucking slimmed down operations. You know,
Mm-hmm.
they fired up to 50% of some like team employees, you know? And at that point, you can't protect the kids that are playing anymore, especially if private equity, whatever company it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
If they end up with 50.1%, they're the majority owners. And at that point, they can tell any head coach, any athletic director, anything that, you know, like, hey, this kid badmouthed us. You need to pull a scholarship and get him the fuck out. You know,
Why doesn't that happen with boosters right now, though?
because I mean, it's like when I tell, you know, when I tell people, you know, when they say I'm a capitalist, no, you're not. You're not a capitalist. You don't control capital. When you look at private equity, the capital they control compared to some of the loudest boosters, yeah, there are some billionaire boosters out there, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at those big money boosters, like at Oklahoma State, you got T. Boone Pickens, right? Pickens, oil money, old oil money. He ain't got shit on BlackRock, even though he's got so much fuck you money, it's not even funny.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, that's what I compare it to. This booster could be, you know, he could be an alum. He could be worth $200 million. And he could sit there and be like, look at all the money I put in here. You know, the fucking aquatic center named after me. And cool. BlackRock will just be like, hey, you school that this guy who has the aquatic center named after him, you're not to have anything to do with him anymore. And here's a check to cover any loss. Right. And Del Sol, that's what I wanted to get to next is Middle Eastern oil money. That's already been floated. I don't know if you guys have been paying attention to boxing, but the sports minister for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is essentially trying to strong arm all boxing to being controlled by the Saudi Ministry of Sport. Like no more sanctioning bodies. The only champs would be ones crowned by the Saudi, you know, by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. When you look at what they're doing with professional wrestling, you know, very big stakeholder in TKO. You know, the parent company of the UFC and WWE. And now they have to do 2 pay-per-views a year there in Saudi Arabia.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
but like, how is this bad for the athletes, and how is this bad for the viewer? I guess that's my question.
Can you imagine being an 18-year-old kid or 19-year-old kid that gets asked this question by a journalist, you know, about like sports washing and the kingdom's horrendous, you know, human rights abuses?
Sure.
You know, I mean, putting that kid up there, nothing's going to prepare him. And honestly, you know,
I would push back on that and say he's never going to see it.
No, I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's always weird, enterprising journalists that would say something.
Let's just say someone does. You're going to get the standard answer, which is, you know, I've never seen it, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you know, kind of
honestly, you'd have to see it to understand it, and you're never going to go to those places where you're really going to understand it. There's people that don't understand exploitation that see it on a daily basis. with labor. So I would go so far as to say I wouldn't worry about a young person being stressed with having to say the right thing in front of a reporter, because we're not hearing young reporters stressing anybody now over Saudi investment. And honestly, let's just be honest, nobody cares.
I mean, that's fair. I mean, I would hope that there would be some conference commissioners, or maybe even the new head of the NCAA, who used to be like an Air Force general or some nonsense, um, would push back and not allow that to happen. But money talks, right? You know, conference, conference commissioners will make, a shit ton of money as long as they keep everybody toeing the line. Um, that's fair, Yank. But I mean, dude, a lot of that is because what has Saudi money really brought to the table when you talk about EPL? A lot of privately financed stadiums. And I think that's what kind of terrifies me is, you know, Saudi Arabia kind of getting its hooks into American sport by offering to privately financed stadiums. That,
To save
like,
taxpayers money, right?
I mean, yeah, that'll be a good thing, right? When you
I mean,
look at,
I'm playing
yeah,
a bit of a
yeah,
devil's advocate
no,
here.
you're absolutely right, because look at the shit show that's happening in Cleveland right now.
Mhm.
The Browns owner
Break
Jimmy
it
Haslam,
break it down.
says, you know what, the city of Cleveland and Cuyahoga County aren't being very forthcoming. They're not willing to put up enough money, and the city said they would give like almost $350 million to renovate Cleveland Browns Stadium on the lake. And Haslam said, you know what, we're going to do a dome stadium in Brook Park,
Mhm.
Ohio.
Mhm.
Keep in mind, he hasn't done a feasibility study for it, because you know what else is in Brook Park, Jason? Like
Mm.
right down the road?
Mm.
The fucking airport. Okay.
Okay.
And then you'd have to like literally reroute 3 major highways throughout Northeast
Whoa.
Ohio.
Okay.
Okay. And then guess what else that he also didn't do? Line up funding for it. He wants a $2.4 billion domed stadium that he has no funding for. And do you know what the gross revenue of Brook Park was last year?
Mm.
$26 million. How the fuck are they going to take out a loan to cover 1.2 billion? No bank on the fucking planet is going to finance that. So a lot of people in Cleveland are pissed. Well, when the Browns left, Dennis Kucinich, who I'm sure you've heard about, um, you know, forced through a law or sponsored a law that got passed called the Modell Law. So essentially, if any team in Ohio threatening to leave, the first act is to find a local Ohio-based owner to purchase the team, right? It initially was flexed when the Columbus Crew, the owner of that MSL team, was threatening to move to Austin, Texas. And guess who came in and offered to buy the Columbus Crew, Jason?
Who? Saudis?
Jimmy Haslam.
Oh, Jimmy Haslam.
So the same man who used the rule to buy a soccer team might have the rule used against him to sell the team. It's just, and hey, DC Joe Black, there is no tax money in Brook Park. None. Okay. And the thing is, he wants to build like, the entertainment district and hotels and all this other shit. There's nothing to do in Brook Park, man. There's just,
It's just a
there isn't.
suburb.
Yeah, dude, that's what it is, man. That's with the Cleveland Hopkins right there. So like it would alleviate a lot of tax issues with municipalities to have Saudi money come in, right? But what also kills a lot of that is the fact that when the Saudis go in and build the stadium, they're not building huge entertainment districts around them.
No.
And what do they get to keep if they privately finance it? The gate receipts, the merchandise, the concessions, they keep all that. That doesn't go back to the city. That doesn't go back to, local business or, any of the subcontracted vendors. They won't see any of that shit. All that will go back to the person that privately financed it, So it's kind of like a catch-22, And honestly, just because of where I am in my life, like I don't want to see Saudi money. I don't want to see it in boxing. I don't
Mhm.
want to see it in professional wrestling. I don't want to see it in college football. Golf, I don't really give a shit about. If they want to start their own league, whatever. It's golf. Um, you know, but
Does it distort something for you?
it's because I know Saudi Arabia is a horrible fucking, monarchy
Mhm.
that in order to build stadiums for the World Cup, imported tens of thousands of workers from other countries, took their passports. Thousands of people died
Yeah.
building them. Um, you know, I see how they're like, look, we let women drive now, but women can still get their fucking hands cut off by the morality police if they show a wrist. Like it's it's just it's a horrible place.
Mhm.
And I mean, and like you said, you have to see it to I've seen it. Like it's not a great place. Um, it's just full of one precious commodity that even the Saudis are realizing they kind of have to diversify with, and that's why they're doing stupid things like the line and Neom, and
Mhm.
trying to pull tech companies there, um, which I think you'll see more of as because they're essentially setting up special economic zones.
But
In,
I guess I would pose this as a kind of a devil's advocate, throw it at you. Um, it sounds like all you have is morality that you don't like,
it is, it is. That's
and
one hundred percent what it is.
if it's just morality, and this is where I would try to have a broader view on why this is bad. Then that's not enough.
Oh,
Because if I'm Joe average, I probably have a lot of libertarian tendencies, and I probably have a lot of neoliberal tendencies. Even if I'm Joe average that thinks I'm some sort of ist, leftist, communist, whatever ist, I'm probably very, very, very comfortable with neoliberal realism,
yeah.
and maybe not even realize it. And having the market provide, having private equity provide, and not have to abuse cities for it, people might not see that as a bad thing. There's a lot of people that don't really care about NIL because for the longest time, even a lot of good meaning people said the kids should get paid, the kids should get paid. Well, the kids are getting paid, kind of,
Sort of in a roundabout way.
in a roundabout way, and private equity is involved in the kids getting
Hmm.
paid. A lot of private businesses is involved with kids getting paid, and it's not as regulated, but I don't think the universities want it regulated, to
I
be
don't
honest with you.
I don't think they do either. And here's why I don't think.
Mhm.
Because when the case came down and said it's legal for student athletes and everybody, I'm using that term because that's in the court cases, right? I hate calling them kids because they're fucking adults, all of them, whether they play women's field hockey or they play football. These are young adults, right? Um, but when they said student athletes can profit off their name, image, and likeness, that's when the universities had a chance to get together,
Yep.
either outside the conference structure or within the conference structure, and pass regulations. And what did they do instead? They went back to Congress and asked for an antitrust exemption. That's what they went and did. So, like you said, they passed on it. They don't want it regulated.
No.
They don't want to. They don't want to be in charge of it. They're just like, you know what? We'll let other people do it. Another very libertarian kind of fucking.
Oh, definitely.
You
Look,
know.
the market will definitely provide. Um, those kids will figure it out. They have agents now.
Mm-hmm.
That's another thing that's crazy. High school kids with agents. I think no one thought about the idea of we'll just pay the kids. It's fine. I think everybody thought of it. Well, the universities will pay the kids because they're making so much money. And even if that's the case, it's like, okay, well, if you want universities to pay kids directly, do you want everybody to get the same amount of money from the starting quarterback to the uh, backup fencer? Like, how is this going to work?
Well,
Um,
that's what the House the NCAA case came down to. And that's why the universities allegedly, because I'm not in the mood to get sued since YouTube just demonetizes all our shit and I can't afford an attorney, came up with that $20 million number. But see, that's not just a 1 year thing. They'd have to pay $20 million and it would be split evenly amongst all the athletes, right? That's women's sports, that's men's sports. And they'd have to pay that every single year. So using our abilities of, deduction, what does that mean? You'd probably see a huge cut in collegiate sports.
Can't afford it.
Right?
I was shocked when I read that article you said that said Stanford cut 12 of their sports. And these are the sports, they call them the Olympic sports.
Yes.
The fencing, the rowing, the field hockey, the volleyball, all the women's sports, baseball.
And what people don't realize is Stanford puts out the most Olympians at every Olympiad.
Yep.
And they took an axe to those sports, right? And this is Stanford. This is one of the most wealthy universities in the fucking country.
Yep.
Right? So it's kind of shocking. I mean, and honestly, I think we're going to see that, Jason. I think within the next 3 or 4 years, I think you'll see, it doesn't matter if Trump's elected or not, some Republican is going to challenge Title IX in court. If it's not already done. I don't live on SCOTUS blog because legal writing just bores me to tears. But
JC says fencing means something completely different in the Gooning League.
Because I nut quick.
Whoa.
Right. But I can see these schools cutting back to like maybe 4 or 5 sports for men and women.
Yep.
And it's going to be the ones that make the most money. Now, what does that mean for our Olympic teams? Well, those athletes will be fucked.
Privately funded.
Almost all of them have been privately funded for probably the last 4 or 5 Olympics, and they're not funded well. I mean, when you look at prize money for winning a medal, our athletes get fucked compared to a lot
also,
of
do you want another Foxcatcher situation?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's a rare thing that happens, but still.
But like it's going to be, this is what's going to happen. And this isn't happening because of private equity. This is because of that fucking libertarian streak that we have in this country, that, like you said, the market will provide kind of the bumpers on what can be allowed and how much money will be split up. And that's not how that works, because there are 130 plus, universities that are members of the Football Bowl subdivision. This private equity firm said 70 teams, right, Jason? We're going to get 70 teams. I doubt it'll be 70. There's no fucking way, especially if these schools have to pay their athletes $20 million a year, split evenly amongst all of them, right? Schools like Southern Miss and Tulane, the service academies wouldn't be able to do it.
No.
You look at smaller California schools, they wouldn't be able to do it.
Fresno State.
Yep.
San Jose is having a great year. UNLV.
So like schools like that, they wouldn't be able to pony that up, So what do? Well, we can't get invited to this big conference, so we're going to miss out on this TV money. And I think that's honestly, that's what the NCAA president and like the group of 4 commissioners want. They just don't want to be the bad guys to come out and say it, right? They don't want to say it. Like Nick Saban, like that dude, because he's Nick Saban, can say, you know what, there are haves and have-nots in football, and at this level, it should just be the haves, right? And that's not a lie. There's only 10 teams every season.
But what happens, and I think this is where sports to me is really interesting, because I think it does affect the way people see the world to a certain degree, because everybody gets to be their own analyst, right? Even with gambling, everybody gets to be their own analyst. I hate hearing gambling talk, because either it's a science or it's fucking luck. It's fucking luck. You can pretend it's a science all you want. And we're not talking about card counting. We're talking about real deal, who's going to win? Well, it's a Thursday after a reign with a left-handed president in office in Sri Lanka. So we know that he tends to play well when these things happen. Like, it's all fucking luck being treated as if it's skill. And a lot of people love it. A lot of people are invested in it. We did a whole show. Clips are coming out this week with Clark Randall, who did a great article on let's make sports betting taboo again, how they're targeting downwardly mobile youth, male youth. It's atrocious what's going on. And I
Oh,
think,
absolutely. And I don't mean to interrupt, Jason, but
yeah,
like
go
one of
ahead.
my good friends here,
Mhm.
as soon as sports betting got legalized in North Carolina, he got FanDuel,
Ugh.
right?
Yeah.
So I'm at the bar and he's like picking my brain about Shohei Ohtani, right? And I'm like, "Are you picking the Dodgers to win?" And he's like, "Oh, I already did that." But I'm like, "I want to see how many." Like, I'm putting a prop bet up on how many singles he'll hit.
Yeah. Bullshit like that.
And I'm like, "Dude, how much are you up?" And he's like, "Oh, dude, I've lost $400 this week." Keep in mind, he's a cook at a restaurant. And I was like,
But you ever
"Do you have $400 to lose this week?"
do you ever check the parlays these guys are hitting? It's not like 3 teams like back in the day when you had your card. It's to your point, how many singles he hit. Someone has to hit so many yards.
Yeah.
And then this team has to win on top of all that. There's these crazy parlays of these insane payouts. So it really is no different to me than pulling that one-arm bandit and winning. You put in 50 cents and you win 25 and you're like, oh my god, I gotta try again. But I think all of that works in this way where we think that we can find the most efficient way to get things done, which is private. That's why I've said in the introduction, what happens when you do allow Saudi money and just private equity into the university system, which is already being big time questioned.
Yeah.
And already has a lot of private money in it from different sides, especially when you talk about things like student housing.
Mm-hmm.
So we're already looking at the university with a side eye, a lot of us. And you do this to college sports where NIL was a mask off moment. And realignment was the Kool-Aid man coming through the door. Like this is just minor league sports at this point.
Dude, it's like, can you imagine like when the first like smatterings of the ACC, which kicked off all this realignment shit, when they poached Miami and Virginia Tech, right? You know, it's just like the Kool-Aid man busting through, like, should we take VT? And he like, oh yeah.
It's I think people would feel very comfortable with public education being run privately. And I think that because we see it in a lot of major metropolitan cities.
It's already happening, right? Like here in
Mhm.
North Carolina, you know, we have a Democratic governor who has just been hamstrung by our General Assembly, which is the North Carolina General Assembly has essentially been under a supermajority by Republicans forever. And, you know, he keeps vetoing bills that the General Assembly can get passed into law. And one of them a couple years ago was being able to funnel public money into private and charter schools, right? And they wrap that up in the whole school choice thing, right? Well, if parents want to send their kids to a private school or charter school, this money should be available for them. And it's like, dude, you're going to completely torpedo your public school system.
They don't care. That's the plan.
Well, that's the thing. You know, the guy who runs North Carolina politics essentially is Phil Berger. And he's been like the NCGOP head forever. Not in name, but, you know, nothing gets done without him, you know, signing off on it. And he kind of says things tongue in cheek, you know, during press conferences and interviews where that's what he wants, you know, and it's maddening. And it's not just North Carolina. Like you said, we see it in major metropolitan areas. You know, we're seeing it a lot in Robeson County, where my alma mater is. They turned over 3 public schools that had, didn't do well on standardized tests to a charter company that just a couple years later was
but what do
found
people want?
guilty of embezzling money from the state.
And those schools close, and then what happens?
Yeah.
And then you don't have any schools. San Francisco closed 2 weeks ago. 11 schools.
Jesus Christ.
San Francisco, for those that don't know, 7 square miles. It is not a massive city. And it's not New York City, where millions upon millions of people are living on top of each other. It's a proper city where, people do kind of live on top of each other. But
Yeah, I was going to say, they kind of did.
It's really freaking small. 11 schools were closed. When you leave it up to the market to fix your problems, they will extract all they can until they can't do it anymore. And I don't think that every charter school has bad intentions, especially in places like Chicago and California, where some of these charter schools are trying to do like cool shit with the arts and education. But once it's not profitable anymore and they have to shutter their doors, and you got to close a public school for this school, then that school just shuts down, and we're like, you know what? We'll just move them to this school. Fuck them. And we seem to be okay with a lot of aspects of our lives being privatized. One of the things we talked about last night was public transportation. And
something the private sector has shown zero interest in ever. But you know what we should do? Definitely privatize it. Definitely.
Yeah.
It's just like, you know what we need to do to privatize this, guys? Elon's building a tunnel that's only 1 lane. It's going to alleviate so much traffic.
The greatest thing that ever happened to Uber was the degradation of public transportation in major cities.
Yeah, and you know what's just unfathomable to me is public transportation continually just keeps having their budget slashed.
Mm-hmm.
Uber and Lyft fill the gap. They've never been profitable. How? What are you idiots doing?
But that's the thing about exploitation that I was telling you about that I don't think most people see when it comes to Uber and Lyft, unless you have to drive like for Uber and Lyft.
Yeah.
And when you look at public transportation and like safety measures for public transportation, a lot of people don't feel safe. Like I asked people in the audience, I was like, this is LA. I know LA is a little different than where I grew up as far as how people take public transportation. I said, how many people here have had bad experiences on public transportation? Everybody raises their hand.
Yeah.
Somebody was telling the story about a guy pulling out a gun on a homeless person. And I'm like, that sounds insane. What is your solution for that? Because I think we look at public services kind of across the board. And again, these people don't like to really admit this, and this goes into parks as well, as places for people that don't have money.
Yeah.
I can always I can take Uber anywhere I want to go. I can go to the outdoor shopping center that has a nice sitting green area for me where I don't have to consume things. But when it comes to public parks, public transportation, hell, roads, a lot of people just don't give a damn about their funding, their upkeep, and how you maintain any of that shit.
Yeah. I mean, and that's a sad thing, right? Especially in such a car-loving country like the United States. You'd think they'd take care of the roads. You'd think that local government, state government, would prioritize, the maintenance of roads.
Mm-hmm.
They don't. Just look at Cleveland, for example. Dr. Claw can tell you all about the fucking roads there. I mean, I'm afraid to drive home in the spring because, I own a Chevy Trax now. That thing will disappear in a pothole. Okay? Like,
You shouldn't have Mexico potholes in the United States.
Yeah, right. You'd think that with such a capitalist outlook and the rising cost of vehicles, and I say this because I fucking work in a car dealership, and I look at the difference in price between the 25 and the 24 model years, because we're getting 25s now. $5,000 to $8,000 per, model. That's fucking ridiculous. And nothing's fundamentally changed about the vehicle except maybe the look. You know, you'd think they prioritize public transportation because people they got to work. Jason, they've got to work so they can pay their taxes, and we can take care and offer services and programs for you people. And, whether Democrat or Republican, what the fuck? My phone just did something very weird to shut off.
Sorry.
No worries. They buy that hook, line, and sinker when they're not offering programs. They're not offering services. They're not offering shit. So what are they doing with our tax money? Oh, we're offering incentives. We're essentially paying giant corporations to put warehouses here. It's going to give you guys jobs. Yeah, tell that to Fayetteville, North Carolina, that's still waiting on the Amazon warehouse to open.
Oof.
They broke ground on their shit 5 years ago. It's completely built, and nothing goes in or out of there.
Why?
Oh, good question. Good fucking question. And
see, DC Joe Black brings up a good point, and I want to hear what you have to say about this. We have one of the best transit systems in the world here in DC. I would say not really, because you bit off us with Bart. I'm just kidding, DC Joe Black. And you can still get shot on it. I feel that way about where I'm from, right?
I mean, dude, I feel the same way about Cleveland.
So, but what do you say to that when you hear politicians say, was the mayor of New York, or not the mayor, I'm sorry, the governor of New York had the National Guard in the subway at one point.
And then she essentially had Eric Adams deploy NYPD because she made up this number that was proved false, that like $7 or $8 billion in revenue was being lost every year from people not paying for their fucking, what do you call it, fast pass, and honestly, DC, dude, I don't know, man. The thing is we all know that the Supreme Court decision essentially said cops are not a thing to protect people, but to protect property. So I don't expect having police officers maybe get off their ass out of their squad cars and being on public transportation would solve anything.
Really? Why do you think that? I mean, you're talking to someone that lives or comes from a city that had a police force. So for transportation, it's sheriffs, and for the subway system, BART, it's a BART police force, a very large police force. So why do you think they wouldn't do anything?
Well, I'm trying to get my thought together.
The idea that cops only protect, I get that, but there's a reality to the fact that if you're afraid of getting shot on a train, let's just be honest. Let's take New York, for example.
Okay.
New York for a long time didn't have transit force, especially throughout the 70s. They were broke as fuck, right? They had the punk ass guardian angels, and that
they rocked a beret like a champ. You leave them the fuck alone.
Fuck Steve Law, that racist piece of shit. But seriously, you have Bernard Goetz, who was attacked, not on a train, but was attacked. And I don't know if you know the story of Bernard Goetz. In 84, he says that 3 black kids accosted him on a train, but he had bought a gun after he got thrown through a plate glass window.
God damn.
Yeah. And so the next year he's on the train, he bought a firearm, and he claims that these 3 or 4 boys, I want to say it was 3 boys, accosted him, tried to rob him. He pulled out his gun. He shot all 3. He didn't kill any of them, but he did permanently cripple one of them. Okay. The one he permanently crippled, and he admitted to this in court. He walked up to the kid who he thought was dying and was like, "Here, have another," and shot him again. Again, this kid permanently crippled. Bernard gets the trial goes back and forth. He doesn't really serve any time, and was looked at across the board as a hero. He was looked at, when I say across the board, I mean, go watch the interviews if you want to. There was tons of black people was like, I wish I would have done it, and and he did this for that. So this idea, to me, is a very liberal idea that these people only do this for that. Okay, well, are you gonna fucking help me then?
I mean, this is where maybe I've toned down a bit. You know, maybe I'm 16.4% a little more cognizant. But you know, I carry.
Okay.
And you know, I've had people fuck with me. And it also might just be because I've seen what a bullet can do to people.
Sure.
I never pull it. You know, I think people who try and fuck with me are kind of stupid because I don't look very nice to begin with. And most people tell me that, which I appreciate. That's kind of like the vibe I want to put off, like, fuck off, don't talk to me. Might be why I'm still single, but that's neither here nor there. But vigilantism is not something I could really get behind, especially now when people will like, did you fart near me? And just like pull a gun and fucking shoot someone. But we're also at a tipping point, I think, with, I don't think it would be like a uniformed cop on like the RTA in Cleveland. I think because, you know, we have so many government entities, be they city government or county government or state government, that are just in love with the privatization argument. I think it would be like privatized forces that would be on those types of things. And that is something I really can't get behind. Privatized police, I think, that's a horrible thing to really get into. You know, we saw how bad it was in the 1860s going into the 1890s in the labor movement with, you know, the Pinkertons, who are still very active in private security measures. You know, you have companies like, I don't know if you know what Triple Canopy is, but it's essentially the umbrella group that bought Blackwater and Constellus and a couple of the other PMCs that also have a private law enforcement arm now. You know, we should not be farming out law enforcement capability to private entities that are just there to sign contracts and make money. I think we saw the horrible effects of that in Iraq with Blackwater and all the other companies that literally were not covered under any type of accountability law the way like I would be under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, right? If they fucked up and killed a civilian, what happens? Well, they'll pull him, send him back to the United States, and 4 months later, he'll be on another assignment. You know, it's like, I just don't think that municipalities would be willing to take people off, you know, cops off out of squad cars to put them on buses and trains. I think they would try and farm that out.
That's the thing. You get a force for that. Like New York has transit cops.
Yeah, but again,
California has a
uniform
division
cops are accountable.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
Privatized forces are not.
Agree.
You know, and I'd hate to see, you know, because let's face it, where's a privatized force immediately going to go recruiting to?
Probably the military.
Veterans, man. They're gonna.
If you're lucky, and you know, if you're lucky, you're gonna get veterans. If not, you're gonna get people that, you know, when you look at the Banco Brown case, to your point about privatized security, and I think this is a case a lot of people forget about, and this is kind of my quagmire here for a lot of people that love doing the ABCAB thing, which I just think is whatever, childish to me. Is you have a man who grew up in the bad community as well, who also suffered these same traumas as a lot of us that have grown up in real bad communities, where his brother was murdered and he was definitely attacked several times. He becomes a security guard that can carry, gets into a skirmish with a kid, and then shoots him over a skirmish in a CVS. Kid's dead.
Yeah, and
This
like,
happened the same time as Jordan Neely, and it didn't have the fanfare because it was two black people that actually come from very similar backgrounds in the sense of they were both, poor. And that's, we can get into the media narratives if you want to, but my issue is I agree with you that in the sense of protecting private property at this point would probably rather not have law enforcement because they can do just as much with private security,
yeah,
and it's not really an expense.
yeah, and it's something that they can also directly control.
Exactly. You can't control police.
No.
You can think you can control police, but you can't control police the way you can a motherfucker that's getting paid $19 an hour and he gets to carry to fucking stand around and shoot shoplifters all day long and then
Yeah.
not get uh, uh, charged for anything. And I'm asking the question, if you want parks to be functional, if you want public transportation to be functional, if you want libraries to be functional, in a perfect world, you don't want all this security, but we
Yeah.
don't live in perfection. So what do you do today? And I'll ask the broader question, why are so many people on the left afraid to join police departments?
Oh, well, the answer to your second question, that's a simple one. It's just like, why don't they join? Why are they afraid to like join, or after they join, they take their veer to the left, like I did. But I wasn't so quiet about it because I didn't give a shit. I was good at my job, right? And I, would challenge anybody to, prove me wrong. But it's those are two notoriously conservative environments,
Sure.
right? And I'm not even a cop. I go to work, man, and I have some bosses that just, they use godless communist as a slur,
Sure.
And it sucks to be around, I don't get my feelings hurt, but I'm like,
You shouldn't.
okay, dude, whatever, man. Like, you're 67 years old.
Mhm.
Just shut the fuck up. Go retire or die. One of the two. Just, keep your shit to yourself. And that's not a fun milieu to be around, especially when you see places like, LAPD, NYPD, Baton Rouge, and New Orleans PD.
I mean, you're naming all of the police departments that are notorious gangs.
Yeah.
But like if we talk about some of these police departments for an example, like let's look at LAPD, right? Let's do a real very brief TikTok-esque history dive into LAPD, right? Historically, it was this supremely white, extremely racist, extremely powerful police department. By the time they start integrating black officers in and Latin officers in, they're still really bad. But one of those officers becomes the mayor. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Tom Bradley was a cop, the first black mayor of Los Angeles, that everybody loves. And by the time you get to the LA riots, there's tons of black cops. Now, as demographics shift in Los Angeles, a lot of those cops are not white. A lot of them are, depending on what city you're in,
Yeah.
a lot of them are Latin, actually. Is that better? I don't know. But if we're going off strictly representation, the LA police force looks
that
like the city.
we should not get into representation here. When I'm talking about those cities in general now, very militarized. And I don't know if you know who Dave Grossman is. He's a veteran who wrote the book On Killing, which I find strangely ironic because he was never in a shooting war. But somehow he wrote a book about killing folks. And he gets hired by police departments to go and give talks, right? And a big part of it is you can't record it, you can't do this, you can't talk about it. Like, he makes everybody present sign NDAs. But what was great was we actually had maybe a more, liberal type cop or sheriff, one of the two, who did record him. And, he essentially, he believes in that broken window model of policing, right? And that's what he really stresses.
Do you think
And
places with
he
broken windows are
teaches.
safer?
I don't think they're any less safe than where I'm
Why?
living now.
As someone that lived around
Because I
broken
know.
windows and burnout cars, I just
So did I. But see, like, any place can, the way that things are now, any place can kind of shift that way depending on the market, so to speak. Like, if the main hub of employment leaves, which is what Fayetteville's dealing with right now, what's going to happen to the city proper? You're probably going to see a lot more rundown places as people move to go find work, but we're seeing a militarization of police that we really haven't seen since the 60s and 70s.
Where you live.
Yes. Well, okay, fair.
I'm asking where you live, because I mean that
Yeah.
militarization has been around for.
Yes, but see, it's getting worse now because they're not wearing what we would perceive as cop uniforms anymore. In a lot of cities in North Carolina, they're wearing UCPs, the same uniform I wore to Afghanistan. Or they're wearing like that khaki green, right? You're seeing a more militarized, like, their armaments are even getting more militarized. Like, they're not. It's not just like an old M1 rifle right now. It is a fucking pimped out AR-15 that the department probably spent like $3,000 a pop on, right? Their pistols, they're getting away from Glocks. They're going to the 6 Sauers that the military issues as sidearms now. You're seeing that with just beat cops, not just SWAT teams anymore, right? They're getting training from people like Dave Grossman, Tim Kennedy. I don't know. Do you know who Tim Kennedy is? Former Strikeforce UFC guy. He has a company where he trains cops now. And his big thing is you have to be forceful with people because that's what people respect. So,
So let me stop you right there.
Okay.
Why don't you do the training then?
I don't want to be a cop.
Well, this is the problem, right? Why do you want, let me ask you this. Why do you want to leave that arena open and complain about it and not have people like you in there doing the training? Is it just something you constantly want to fight? Or is it something you want to change? Do you want it to change after the magical revolution, or do you want it to change within your lifetime? I'm asking the question seriously because there's a friend I have, a very close friend, that is at a weird point in his life where he's like, I could join the police force and make real money. Because in California, you become a cop, you make real fucking money. Walking in the door, making real money. And he said, Jay, I went on a couple ride-alongs, and I went on this police force here in this nicer part of town. And those cops, he jokingly said the cops were better looking. And he said they were much nicer. And I went on one in this one city, and they did that thin blue line shit with me. And they're on that warrior cop bullshit. This is a highly intelligent individual that jokingly I said, look, man, if you did it for a few years, at least you could write a good book out of it. But seriously, how do you tell somebody that's struggling doing the quote unquote right thing and say, look, you could be a cop? We died to have counselors become cops, and in certain cities they do because the money's so much better. So do you want more people like that being cops and doing the trainings, or do you want to leave it to these people that you're complaining about? Look, I understand the warrior cop book. I understand the problems with policing, but how does that ever change if people just want to be antithetical to it.
Okay. So one of my really good friends got out of the Army, moved to Washington
Mhm.
State, right? Well, he got stationed there first and decided he liked it. He retired there. He joined a sheriff's department right out of the military, right? And this is, I wouldn't say he's like as far left as we are, but this is a dude that was doing exactly what you said. I'm going to go kind of fight the system from the inside. I want to change the perception of cops to the public. I want to do the right thing. He made it 8 months because those warrior cops and those cops that maybe they're not doing the wrong thing, but they're not doing the right thing either. Right? They made his life hell just for, him showing up for duty every day. So those organizations are tight knit. And if you don't get in with the group, you will be ostracized and they will do whatever they can to drum you out. And that makes it hard to get in and kind of dismantle that warrior cop bullshit, that Tim Kennedy bullshit, that Dave Grossman bullshit. And the thing is, you have the heads of these powerful police fraternal organizations. I'm not going to call them unions. They shouldn't even fucking exist.
Sure.
But they're out there. What do they do? We're not the bad guys here. We're trying to help you. We're trying to make it safe. Okay. But their actions show something completely different. And I'm not talking about how they treat the populace in general. I'm talking about how they treat their own peers.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's another catch-22, bro.
But you're talking
right.
about an army of one. All the talk of organization. Why doesn't someone go, look, we got 40 20-somethings that want to change the world.
Okay.
And they don't have that much going for them financially in this town. What if we go, we're gonna have our 20 our 40 20-somethings infiltrate the police force.
Okay, and out of that 40, maybe 6 of them will actually get into the academy.
Why do you think the number's so low?
6.
We're training them in our secret leftist training ground. No, this is the same training ground everybody wants to have for the fucking revolution, right?
Okay. Now here's the thing: big police departments, NYPD, LAPD, they actually have physical fitness and other standards that you have to hit in order to get into the academy. Like down here in North Carolina, you can do BLET, which is basic law enforcement training through like a community college, get accredited, and then you'll do I think it's 6 months of OJT, right? Where you're buddied up with a senior officer, you learn local law, shit like that, right? But Fayetteville has an academy. So you can go to BLET, but you still have to get into academy now, right? And the thing is, Fayetteville's constantly been asking for more officers. The PD's constantly had their budget increased, but they really do weed out a lot of people going into academy. And that's what they would do. And even say we have our secret leftist training camp, which if there is one, I have 2 questions. 1, is there an instructor position? And 2, how much does it pay? Because daddy still needs to eat and keep the lights on.
I mean, look,
okay.
The point is, it's like the movie The Spook Who Sat by the Door, right? And that whole movie, I don't know if you've seen it or read the book, but the whole thing is a guy, there's these new programs, real thing was happening, letting in people of color in the Secret Service. So he learns everything in the Secret Service, and he goes back out into the community, gets a bunch of gang members, and kind of forms a revolutionary Secret Service with all the things that he learned in the Secret Service, and topples the system, blah, 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 blah. Great movie. It got pulled within a week of its release. True story.
Shocker.
That being said, you don't hear people talk about that anymore. We've talked about on this show several times how it was even difficult for you to join DSA chapters because of your former military history. I'm asking this question that people don't like to deal with. Law enforcement ain't going to change because you protest. It's not going to change because of your feelings or your Twitter posts. People have to make the difference, but people don't want to make the difference. Same thing with like homeless services. That
Yeah.
nobody wants to work in
Now,
that field.
no. And the thing is, it goes back to discussions we've had before. In order for us to change things, even at like a community level, it's going to be very uncomfortable. And there's going to be a lot asked of you as an individual to help the community, right? Now, let's just say, okay, we can't infiltrate the PD, right? We can't infiltrate the Pound Town PD. Okay. So we set up community defense. At first, we're going to have 100 people that volunteer for it, right? But when they see that it's long hours of standing around and just watching things, by week 3, we're probably down to 50. Right? Oh man, I just got off a shift at work. I can't pull my watch shift. Right? Or especially since we're in the United States, right? Where we get this. We have a group of dudes that come in looking like they're going to storm the gates. Full kit. Just decked out rifle. They've got like they've got UCP pants on. They decided, hey, the old boots still fit. I'm going to wear those too. And then, they wear a t-shirt underneath and they got a backwards cap and some Oakleys on. Right? That's not exactly what I want to say. Hey, this is community. This is for defense of your community. Right? Or we're going to get the ones that like, I read a law book once. I know the laws.
Sovereign citizens.
Right? And yeah, and it's just like, how do you fix that? And like, I'm asking a question because I wish somebody would pop up and be like, hey, I've got the answer right now, but like, I don't have it.
I really think the answer is, why are these institutions, you've given me 1,000 excuses on why these institutions are bulletproof. So why bother fighting it? At that point, that's just something you want to do. Because you don't want to infiltrate it, which is totally legal. Not one time has anybody said we need more leftist sheriffs. These are the people that are fucking in charge of evictions. There was a 5-minute second where we said we need more leftist DAs, and we got one, and then that motherfucker got ousted. And you don't hear about any of this shit anymore. You know what I hear about? I hear about media personalities saying bullshit. And I hear about why Kamala Harris is a horrible person. I don't care about either one of those things. I want to know why domestically, people don't want to do things that have instantaneous impacts on their community.
I mean, I don't have an answer, man. I wish I did. Because then I could be like the oracle of American leftism and then just really get down to the business of growing my beard out. And,
is American leftism, and I'm asking this mildly rhetorically, is American leftism just sloganeering and protest at best?
A lot of it
is. Then that's just it's futile.
I'm not disputing that. I'm not. When I made the decision to really lean into my political beliefs, my uncle, who isn't political, but he's probably been one of the most constant and actually like uplifting like males in my life. And he's like, dude, you are setting yourself up for a life of disappointment because it'll never work here. And, that kind of was a bummer. And then I went, I would say I took a more militant term, especially after dealing with what I dealt with in the military. And, I lucked out and had some very sobering conversations with you. And I'm appreciative of that. I really am, because it is very sobering when you realize that the thing most likely is not going to happen. Americans don't like being uncomfortable. And the thing is going to make us very uncomfortable, right? And I think that goes down to what you were saying with the protesting and the sloganeering, right? Getting shit on Twitter, kind of uncomfortable. Getting gassed by a cop and getting hit with a less than lethal round, that's really uncomfortable, but you were seen doing it. And honestly, when you look at American leftism, a lot of people who claim to be a leftist don't know what it means and don't want to learn what it means, what it would take. They don't look at the history of like leftist movements overseas. And I've said it a million times, like, what works in one place may not work in the other, but you could look and analyze at the historical occurrences of it. When I had a conversation and somebody said if a leftist revolution kicked off, at most we would be dealing with like right-wing militias. And I was like, are you fucking stupid? I was like, tell me what you know about the Spanish Civil War. And he goes, well, I don't know nothing about it. Okay. The Popular Front movement that was fronted by the Soviet Union during the 30s, which was just a reaction to the Great Depression. They managed to oust a dictator, set up this Popular Front movement that only lasted about 4.5 years before the military, decided that they would overthrow the government. And they're like, the entire military? And I was like, actually, no, the Navy and the Air Force sided with the Republicans. It was the Army that was like, nah, fuck this dude. And I was like, it started out as a militia on militia kind of thing, but it ended up with the full force of Spain's colonial army backed by over 100,000 Italian troops and specialist Condor Legion and equipment from Germany that steamrolled, the Republican forces. I brought up the international brigades and how there was a large leftist movement that came from around the planet, to help fight, fascism in Spain. And then by 1938, the non-aggression pact that was being ignored by Italy and Germany, the United Kingdom and the United States made, every other nation enforce it. So they pulled those international brigaders out. And, within 11, 12 months, the Republic had fallen to Franco. And I said, that's how that would go. And he goes, the U.S. military wouldn't operate here. It's against the law. I'm like, in the middle of...
Got some bad news for you.
I was like, in the middle of a rebellion? Yes, they would. And I brought up the film Civil War, which I thought was actually pretty good. I wasn't sure how I'd feel about it. I was like, if you think that the United States government won't use helicopter gunships or bombers or drones or naval fire on a rebellious area, I'm like, you're fucking high, And he's like, but they would destroy stuff. And I'm like, well, it's war, dude. That fucking happens. I was like, this isn't going to be two militias in the middle of a big open field in Montana shooting it out for a leftist cause. I was like, Spain was devastated by 3 years of war and then another 30 plus years of fascist dictatorship that the United States decided they were going to really buddy up to in the late 40s and early 50s. So I was like, if you think that the U.S. government is just going to...
You guys handle your stuff. We're busy over here.
Yeah. I was like, that's naive thinking. I was like, the thing will make us all vastly uncomfortable. There won't be internet. There probably won't be a lot of power. Food stuff, so be in short supply. You think your shooting war is going to be really, successful when you have no ammunition? Wait a minute. How did the right-wing dudes get a hold of tanks? Oh, I don't know. There's a tank producing plant in Lima, Ohio. Ohio, what is that? That is Trump country, dude. Hate to break it to you. Outside of the 3 C's, that is Trump country. How are you going to take out a tank, bro? Yeah, see, that's what I thought. Americans don't like to be uncomfortable. It's not going to come down to that. Somebody already said that it's going to come down to changing material aspects. And that's where, that's honestly is going to how it's going to be. And it's just, I don't know. I wish I had
As
like a concrete
as
answer
as
for your questions, dude, because I kind of feel like a dick because I did a lot of
I don't
jumping
want you
around,
to feel like a dick, and I want to apologize if I'm coming off
you
argumentative
know?
because I'm not. I'm literally
No,
asking
because
questions.
this conversation needs to happen. This conversation needs to happen, right? Because this is what I hate most about the American left is our subscription to the
Mhm.
isms to the point where it does not allow you to work with other leftists. Am I a big fan of Trotskyists? No. But if there was a Trotskyist group here in town that was doing something good in the community, fuck yeah, how can I help?
And
Your whole your whole idea of the permanent revolution is kind of creepy and weird, but okay, I get it. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But what can we do to help the material situation now,
mhm.
right? But you look online, oh fuck, man,
Yeah.
it's
It's
nonsense.
what really kind of got to me a little bit was uh seeing the post Bernie blow up. All this energy, all this new energy into this idea that people deserve better, that um, we should have housing, and people living in the street and in public parks is a bad thing because they should be
Yeah,
living in a home and they should have proper care, and and public education is something we should cherish and not try to privatize. There was a moment
and
healthcare,
healthcare,
right?
everybody should
There's a
have it.
moment where I felt like there was a lot of energy into that, but and I can't really put my finger on it. I've read some very interesting texts about this moment. We're still kind of going through. I don't think it's over per se.
Yeah, dude, I think we're in the death throes of it. You know, it's like that guy in the iron lung that he can't
Uh-huh.
leave it, but he's still holding on so you can like ladle soup into his mouth once a day. You know, like
It's what we what's happening to me that I find interesting is a lot of left conversations happen in online spaces, and they're very middle class conversations that speak about abstractions and
yeah.
truly divorces itself from any sort of working class. And the people that are actually
I mean, that's
Mhm,
to me that's the DSA in a nutshell these days. When you look at like DSA late 2000s, early 2010s, I think you actually had a group that was dedicated to actually changing things. But when they started having members when elected seats at any level as Democrats, they really hitched their wagon to
sure.
that, right? Well, we'll just run as Democrats. We don't need to run as DSA. We can run as Democrats because that gets our foot in the door and then we can change things. And it's like, dude, that's not how the American political system works. You hit your wagon to being to the Republicans or Democrats, then you're going to toe that line because you want those committee seats so you can make it seem like you're working to change, you know, a la AOC,
Mhm.
right? You know, or you end up like Jamal Bowman, who maybe rocked the boat just a little too much. And establishment Dems were like, we can't have that.
Oh no, the Jamal Bowman thing is and Corey Bush. Don't forget Corey Bush. These are two people that, once they said, "Hey, this thing is effed up that's going on in Israel Palestine," it was like, you got to go. But my point, I would say that to this on the city level, in a place like Los Angeles, there was definitely DSA people that ran and won seats. They're
Mhm.
still in those seats.
And I think there's a couple in New York State
Yes,
level as
yes.
well, and New York
There's
City.
a few DSA people in New York State. DSA membership has dropped precipitously since kind of the big push in 2016, 2015. What I mean about that Bernie moment is there's all this uh energy towards this idea about leftism, but also social media is becoming much more ubiquitous, and it's becoming a very important part of our lives. Even though we try to act like we don't dig it, it's a very important part of it. We're here on YouTube, um, and for the people that lost those elections, not all, but a lot, they got podcasts. And the Bernie Sanders campaign is kind of a perfect example. Now, first and foremost, when you run a counter campaign, meaning you're not running an establishment line, no one that works in the establishment is going to fuck with you because you're persona non grata. So
Yeah.
off the bat, he's working with people that might not have a certain level of experience. I understand that, and people need to understand that. That being said, it's not like people left that campaign and went to work on other campaigns. They got into media.
Yeah.
And that happened on a smaller level with a lot of those people that ran as like, I'm the DSA person. I'm running for county treasurer of city X or county X, and I'm running on Medicare for all and free college. And it's like, well, you're the treasurer. It's not really in your purview.
Yeah.
But they were able to kind of take these leftist things and go all over social media because everybody wanted to have the AOC moment. So much of her donation dollars that were coming in were not coming in from her district per se. They were coming in from all over the country and other more
Yeah.
well-to-do districts in New York. And she didn't need that many votes to win. We've had on this
Yeah.
show, you can go back and listen to the show, the people that actually helped her get elected. And they said, full stop, how did she win? 10,000 votes. We knew it. That's how she
Yeah.
won. So, for example, I haven't seen him and he moved, but I was real tight with a guy named Shahid Buttar who was running against Nancy Pelosi. And that's a hard race to win because you're not talking about 10,000 votes. You're talking about hundreds of thousands of votes. And you're a nobody. And he did a lot of walking. He had an awesome viral video. I was in, my kid's in, Ben's in, Michael Brooks is in the viral video. And that was kind of a trend that we don't even see anymore because that's what everybody wanted. Now, Shahid didn't pivot to a media career because it's just not his bag. But a lot of people did.
I mean, dude, case in point, look at the goddamn Favreau dick munch. If I hear pod save anything again, I'm going to like full stop, become the Kool-Aid man, run through a wall and fall like 20 stories to my death. Okay. Like I never understood this because those just colossal twat waffles that turned running a losing campaign into a media career. And then as some kind of political expert, I'm like, dude, you're a fucking loser. You literally lost your campaign. You shouldn't be giving advice to anybody. You should be the guy that's like, whatever you do, don't do this because that's what we did. Like if I'm Favreau and I have my first Pod Save America episode, I'm like, listen, guys, if you want to win a federal election, a national election for president, you know what you don't do? Ignore the Rust Belt completely and don't campaign there at all. Because that's exactly what his fucking plan was in Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, going into November in 2016. Don't worry, Hillary, we got this. You don't have to go there. We're going to go to other places in the South. Bro, you're not going to win those states anyway. Take your ass back up to fucking Michigan. Fucking hold squat there. Have a couple beers with the people. Give them that warm and fuzzy. And then maybe you win. But no, you wanted to go to South Carolina? You're not winning that fucking state, dude. Like, I'm dumbfounded how he failed into success, which is the American success
For a lot of
story,
people,
really. Yeah, and it's just it's mind-boggling to me that people take anything he says with anything other than a grain of salt. So,
Newer Yank, we can see you when you write, so you don't have to leave. We can see you. Chapo Trap House did no phone banking drive since 2020. The thrill is gone. I think for a lot of people, the thrill is gone. I think energy all that energy went to a lot of different places. I think some people had such a disdain for the Democratic Party because of Bernie Sanders, and rightfully so.
Yeah, I also think a lot of it, you say it's just 10% of this group, right, Jason? I think that 10% of it took the leap into the far left. Like they went full hardcore. I'm a communist. I read Stalin's diary every night before I go to bed. That type of shit. And they detached completely. And then you have another probably similar percentage size that just got burnt out by it, by disappointment. They expected that Bernie roll, to hit,
But it
and it
goes back
didn't.
to your uncle that's like, expect the disappointment. It's like, look, these pictures behind me are disappointing and triumphant at the same time, right? This is some of the best and worst times of my life. The biggest failures I have as a man, as a father, are sitting behind me, and some of them are the greatest joys I have. It was a constant struggle, and I constantly asked myself why. Doing this show is a constant fucking struggle. Why? And it feels like, it feels present tense, that you don't really have to struggle. You don't really have to, because you can win somewhere else. You can win in the gossip wars. You can win in the ratio wars of social media.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to asking real questions like, what's the deal with the working class? Because I hear people say the term, but who do they think is the working class? You have these
Yeah.
massive logistics hubs filled with people that work in non-unionized environments. And we're not just talking the South.
No.
So when we do these shows, are we trying to talk to them? Do we want them there? Because I'll be honest, there's tons of programs on here that love shitting on the working class and probably don't want those people at their parties.
Yeah, but that goes back to what you were saying. A lot of our terminally online lefties are middle class folks, right? And I'm not saying this is like, I mean, we all have to be honest. Marx was a moocher, and if he didn't have angles, he would have starved to death before he wrote Capital and the Manifesto. Like let's be honest, right? So Marx may have been the mouthpiece of what we know as communism, but Engels was the fucking bankroll. Okay? That was a different time, right? Now we have, what we call working class now because of how expensive everything is, right? Like how prices have shot through the roof and how expensive it is just to make it. We have these I don't know, lefty influencers, lefty thought influencers that are largely middle class and had like a built-in decent paying job, coming out of college, trying to speak to people that they want to turn into leftists, right? That have been struggling since they fucking flew out of the womb, you know? And it's hard to bridge that kind of cultural gap, right? Because who I don't want talking to me about communism or Marx, or Dr. Newton or Thomas Sankara? Some white dude who I saw drive up to this meeting in a goddamn Lexus, you know? Give me, our old time labor leaders, like, to build that kind of solidarity, and granted, unions are problematic in this country, not because of, building worker solidarity, but look at how they did it in the early part of the 20th century. How many unions did we have that were very powerful, that were segregated or didn't allow women, you know? And when you look at some of these larger unions now, you don't see a lot of minorities or women in leadership positions. Um, and that's where I give Sean Fain some, some credit. I know he's kind of like the flavor of the week as far as labor representation goes, but I think he's done a pretty good job highlighting the UAWs elected a lot of new leadership at their locals, and a lot of them are, oh, Kulinski drives a Prius Virtuoso. I'm not gonna, like say anything about that, but I will push him over when he gets to like the podium, be like, fucking nerd, you know? But you know, we're seeing kind of a changing of the guard, but you know, like we were talking about, what is it, 8% of America's workforce is unionized or whatever. You know, it's a minute number. But what you don't see, I think it's what you were getting to. You don't see these middle class leftists like hopping down off the stage and actually going and trying to unionize some of these, you know, hard walnuts to crack. You didn't see them going down to Alabama to the Warrior Met strike, right? You didn't see him going to help Smalls, who has his issues. I'm well aware, but you didn't see him, you know, this hypothetical middle class white leftist going to help Smalls organize in New York. You don't see him out there trying to organize, but you hear him talk about unions an awful lot, you know? And it's like, I had a dude give me shit because, you know, I tried to organize the store I worked at before my current job. I had cards and everything. And when I brought him in for my shift on Monday, dude, half the store had been reassigned and another quarter were fired. You know, my GM heard what I was doing and made sure that she would nip that shit in the bud. You know, and that goes into that. I'm going to be disappointed more often than not, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to stop. And I think maybe that has more to do with me being stubborn or just like I'm older now and I want to see some kind of net positive change for like my kids and your kids and everybody's kids. Honestly, I don't want them to have to deal with the shit we dealt with growing up. You know, but we need more of those people that are like down on the ground being poor. And I hate phrasing it that way, but we need more of those people to kind of step up and be like the mouthpiece of leftism. I think that would help us deal with a lot of the isms that we silo ourselves off into. It's not a perfect system. Trust me. I know, like, I'm not a utopian. I don't believe in utopia. But I think if we had more of that, maybe we can get some of these solutions to the questions that you brought up that I just sat here and was just like, duh, you know, but like, that's the thing, man. You know, but on the other side of that is how many working class people, like those people on the ground that are actively struggling day to day, how do we get to them before reactionaries like JD Vance or, you know, the Trump wing
I
of
think they're
Republicans?
already there. This is where people are interesting, and I want people to think about this for a little bit because, you know, it's late and Mac has to go, and I have to go because why am I awake right now?
Yeah, Jason needs
I'm
to
retarded.
sleep.
I drove back, and it was the worst drive back ever. The freeway shut down on us twice. You've one of those drives where you're just like, oh great. But anyway,
you're like, I can make it in 8 hours. It turns into like 14. You're just like, Mac, oh god.
It's no traffic because we left at around 2 a.m. We left Ben's.
Okay.
He rents a room in LA because he teaches a class there. And we were gonna get home. No, we left before 2, like 1:30. We should have got home like 4. And we get on the freeway, and then the sheriff has the whole road blocked. Okay. I don't know my way around LA. Ben doesn't know his way around LA, but it's fine. We find the freeway on our own, like adults. We're motoring. We get to San Diego. Same thing happens. Dead stop right by the fucking military base. Massive car accident at like 4 something in the morning. And I fell asleep. I put the car in park, turned the motherfucker off, and we were both sleeping there. And we were still not moving. But we got home. We got our McGriddles right before we hit the border. That's all that matters.
You got to get a McGriddle in.
We got a McGriddle. Before it was, you know, that's all that matters, dude. You get a McGriddle at damn near 6 a.m.
Yeah, I mean, you got to.
But seriously,
think about that McGriddle that you're gonna get. You know, McDonald's, ching ching, give us money.
And I use the app. I did use the app, by the way.
Dude, Jason, I'm not even kidding. Like when my kids, like on the weekends, are like, "Hey, Dad, can we like get something out?" I'm like, "Cool. Where do you want to go?" And they're like, "I want to go here." And I'll look through because I have like a whole folder on my phone that just says food. And I'll be like, "Well, I don't have that app yet," and I will get the app.
Wait till I get an app for that. Yeah.
Right? And I'm like, "What do you guys want?" And they're like, "So we're not gonna go out?" I'm like, "No, I am not going out on a fucking Saturday afternoon in Fayetteville. I'm not doing that. It's either gonna be super crowded or I'm gonna be surrounded by vet bros, and I don't want to do either of those things. I don't want to be around either of those things." And they're like, "Okay, so you'll go pick it up?" I'm like, "Fuck yeah." And I love getting there. And they're like, "Oh, hey Mac, here's your order." And I'm like, "Thank you. Thank you." You big dicks.
But hey, like seriously, this to me is the average person in a nutshell. People are we're all over the board with the way we see the world.
Yes.
And I got a buddy. I would say he leans much more in the conservative end, definitely much more in the libertarian end. Maybe even if you were to nail him down and say your political worldview, because like most people, he really doesn't have one, right? But what made him wake up to exploitation and try to organize labor was he drove for Uber. And as their terms started changing for workers and it got worse and worse, he was part of those people that were trying to organize. I don't know if you remember, everybody knows Prop 22, but before Prop 22 in California, there was a bill called Assembly Bill 5, which said, okay, this is what a private contractor is. This is what an employee is. And if you work for these places and you're an employee, you cannot unionize, but you're an employee. Those companies fought that so hard, and you get Prop 22, which is still getting fought in court. But anyway,
Yeah, of
before
course.
even AB 5 came down, those drivers for Uber and Lyft, and I believe DoorDash as well, were fighting to organize. It was thousands that were organizing because
Yeah.
they're like, we need to have a union because we need to have some power here. That's why these tech companies are trying to change the laws of what an employee is, what at-will employment looks like. And these are the fights that I don't hear enough people talking about because a lot of people don't feel they have to deal with it. But this is where a large segment of the quote unquote working class is, because so many people have a gig and then they have to do this on the
Yeah.
side on the weekends. Living here in Mexico,
Or they just live through the gig economy because nobody's fucking hiring. You know, like I have friends who do DoorDash, drive for Lyft and Uber, and what's the grocery one?
I know exactly what you're talking about. Instacart. Yep.
Instacart. And that's what she does to make sure she can pay all her bills.
And that's a lot.
So she's lit. Yeah, and she's in her car probably 18 hours a day. 16
There's so many people that you're going to do one of two things if you live down here and you're an expat. You're either going to be one of the rare Americans that works at the outlet mall, and gotta love America, when you cross the border, you cross at the outlet mall. If you're walking, right? You walk right into commerce.
Well, you got to be able to go and get some Adidas slides and an Orange Julius. Okay,
I mean,
what
that
you have
sounds
to be able
dope.
to do.
I would dig that.
You
know, I like to have nice flip-flops. I live by the beach.
Yeah,
but
dude. I mean, I got a nice set of Puma slides this year, and my son made fun of me because I don't wear socks with them. And I'm like, this is why your generation sucks. You wear tall socks with slides.
Is he a fucking Latino from 1991?
Dude, I'm telling you, all these teenagers wear socks with fucking slides.
If your kid
now,
has an
man.
Edgar haircut, I'm going to call CPS. Okay.
No. He always gets like a medium fade on the side because like he does karate, so he has to wear headgear.
Not an Edgar.
And no. You know, but like I bought him these like caps that you would wear under like a football helmet. And I was like, dude, you can just put your hair back, because he wanted to grow it out. And I was like, you just throw it on and it's moisture wicking. And he's like, I didn't like how it felt on my head. I'm like, bro, you fucking neurodivergent weirdo.
Mac has mentioned Adidas slides. This is approved of highly with me. But seriously, I this person who would much rather invest in crypto was dedicated to organizing against the tech oligarchy for his fellow driver. And, you know, I've heard him say some very right-wing things. But if you bring up labor organizing, his eyes get big and he gets excited. And I feel like because we live in the world of branding, everybody's branding, right? I'm a thisist. It's just branding. And individuality, that's that neoliberal realism I'm always talking about. That you miss all these millions of people that would be part of your team because they're pretty much politically homeless. They're really politically fucking homeless.
Yeah, and let's face it, a lot of people draw their political views from the small groups that they're in. And let's face it, this being the United States, and I saw it, I saw it a lot in the military where you saw like groups of like 5 or 6, people, and one person kind of dominated it. Anti-broccoli Harrington. Jason's a bit
Only if me and Sarab could do the hand thing like Carl Weathers and yeah, or
and
Arnold.
Arnold.
Yeah.
I knew these men. Green Berets from Fort Bragg. Oh, what a... Don't trust comfy class parlor socialists, and you can never trust soft middle class folks to have your back in a street fight. It's fucking true, Tony.
Look, I say all this to say that when you talk to real people, you will be surprised at where they land on a lot of things politically. And one of the toughest things to get people to really be active about politically is literally organizing the working class. And here you have a young man who was like, I was out there fucking organizing. We were signing all the petitions. Like, fuck these. Like, he gets violently angry about that because all the hours cats like this spend, again, when you live here, what I was trying to say was when you live here as an expat, there's only a few jobs people do if they physically work. They drive Uber or Lyft and they live in their car for a few days a week. I mean, they get in their car, they make it real nice with blankets and shit, and they go out and drive as long as they humanly can. They crash out on a street somewhere, wake up and do it again until you make enough money to pay your rent. Now, our rent here is a lot more affordable than across that imaginary line. And that's why cats live here more than you would think. But they're living in their fucking car.
Yeah.
Like, that's some insane shit. And the few worker protections that they got from this flimsy bill got rolled back to nothing when those companies were like, even though they can't organize a union, still fuck them anyway, because we're never going to look at these people as employees, and we must fight for what we view as a real employee that we would have to pay these benefits to, and what is a contract employee. And we have to fight for this at-will state in which we live in, where we can just let people go willy-nilly and not really give a damn. That, for me, is part of the war on labor. When we talk about the working class, everybody wants to talk about Amazon, and everybody gets a real fucking amazingly stiff erection for Starbucks. But I don't know why no one gives a fuck about fast food workers.
Well, dude, you know exactly why. You know exactly fucking why. We have this preconceived idea that that's where you go to start your work career, but you don't stay there. And what I've decided to stop using the term boomers. It is literally the fuck you got mine generation. And that's how I refer to them now, right? They have brainwashed people into thinking that, right? The same way they brainwash, if you just work hard enough, you can afford a house. No, you cannot, sir. I'm not buying a house for $25K anymore. It's never going to fucking happen, right? That's another good point, Isaac. Another good point, Isaac, right? Well, they preach college. Well, when you graduated, it cost $13.48 for 4 years of school. Now, I went to a school that fortunately had a program that capped in-state tuition at $2,000 a semester, right? It's one of like 4 states that are like capping in-state tuition. Out of state is still fucking ridiculous, right? Okay, so I'm in debt to go to school, and I hit a job market that there's like entry-level position, guys. Get this. We need you to have 10 years experience. Okay? You have to go get other technological certifications to go with this position as well. And on top of that, we're not going to have a person look at your resume. It's just going to be AI looking for a few keywords. And if you don't have those keywords on your resume, guess what? Your shit don't get looked at. So you're in a job market where you're like, fuck, dude, I have to do something. So what do? You do like me. When you graduate college, granted, I graduated late, but I graduate college. I'm like, it's a rough market out there. I'm going to apply to a lot of things. And the only person to call me back was my former district manager at Father Jonathan's. That's the job market. And the fuck you got mine generation didn't have to deal with that shit. So now these are these fucking bastions that are spreading nonsense, and people eat it up because it goes into that very Ayn Randian idea of American excellence. And if you take care of yourself, the community will take care of itself. And that's not how community works, And then we have these tech oligarchs that are supposed to get us to Mars, and they're gonna create technologies that make things easier on the worker. Do you want to know why they're developing these technologies there? Fuck you, got mine generation guy. It's so they can eliminate our fucking jobs and they don't have to pay us anymore. That's it. That's what they want to do. And where's that going to leave us as prices continue to go up? And I think, or I'd like to think, Jason, I should say, that we're all smart enough to see that this is not inflation driving prices up. This is 100% corporate greed.
Agreed.
100%. And the thing is, these companies will continue to jack up prices as they consolidate. If you think groceries are bagged now, wait until Kroger's and Albertsons presents their plan for the merger and it gets approved by the federal government. The potential CEO of the combined company already said he would eliminate 450 stores across the country. Where are we going to eat? How are we going to get food? Hey, it doesn't matter. Doesn't fucking matter. Capitalism rolls on, right? Got to let the market take care of it. Can't have anybody standing up and saying, whoa, hey, this is kind of fucking bullshit. So, like, where's it going to leave us when we have, like, kids, our kids' ages that do go to school or get a trade and they go into the market, and guess what? There's nothing there for them. And that's going to happen sooner than later, whether we want to admit it or not, and nobody is going to fucking step up and say anything because of our stupid bipolar political system and the lack of actual give a shit for workers. That's why we have distinctions like contract workers and employees. There shouldn't be a thing like that. If somebody works for your company, they're an employee. If they meet certain, time and service requirements, they're eligible for benefits. Like, dude, I got dental insurance now, dude. You know how fucking rad that is?
No, dude, look, I was talking to my kid last week and we were talking about what she wants to do. And I was like, look, I don't have benefits, honey. And if you have dental insurance and vision because you get into teaching, that's winning. And she kind of giggled, but she understood what I was saying because I was like,
Yeah.
I don't have it. I was like, God forbid I get sick. She called me. She goes, I haven't seen you on moving around on social media, and I saw you had a pre-recorded show. So whenever I can't see you, I get worried. She goes, I'm always the first like on your show. It's funny, but seriously, this is where, circling back to something we said earlier, this is where, when you have the labor uprising and the leftist police force comes up, they're not breaking it.
Well, we got to get there first.
They're not breaking the labor strike.
And to answer one of your questions, it's not that I don't want to do that.
Mhm.
I physically can't do shit like that anymore. It's like when me, you, and Marcus were talking about it. I was like, if the thing happens, I got 6 days in me, nothing more, nothing less.
You are on your own, man.
I'll fucking be dead. First 3 days, I'll be fine. It'll be like I found the fountain of youth. But then I go to sleep on the night of day 3, and I wake up in the morning of day 4, and 2 back surgeries and the spinal compression. I'm wearing kit all day. They're like, hey, Mac, you got to get up, dude. We got to assault this position. I'm just like, ooh. Ooh.
You're falling on your grenade like Powers Booth and fucking
I'm like,
Red Dawn.
all right, guys, here I come. And they're sprinting because, of course, they're like, oh, you've got some experience. You can go with all these young guys. And I'm just like, ugh. And I get up and I think I'm the Flash out there. But really, I'm about 50 meters behind everybody. Okay. I can't keep up. Right. And then I'm going to slip or like trip up. And I'm going to fall flat on my face. I'm like, God damn it. I'm going to get up and they're going to shoot me. Right. And it's going to miss. I'm going to be like, oh, fuck. I forgot how that felt. This sucks. And I'll finally catch up. And we spend the day 4 in this position we took. Day 5 is kind of a slow day. They bring up some ammunition, maybe throw us a little bit of food. I'm sitting there like, is there any ice? Because I really need to ice my back. And they're like, bro, we're in a sector that doesn't even have power. Oh, fuck me. They're like, all right, Mac, you need to go fill up canteens. Cool. Fucking grab the canteens. There's a stream. It looks kind of clean. Do we have any water, like water treatment tablets? Water what? Oh, fuck me.
We got some Alka-Seltzer. Does that work?
All right, cool. So I fill up the canteens and I go back and, we just spend the day in this position. And, and the leader, who's probably like a 22-year-old who's never done this before, but they are really good with theory and, talk themselves into a leadership position. I'm like, hey, man, like, we're really exposed here. I would tell, whoever that we probably should just hold squat till we get reinforcement. She's like, no. They're like, no, we're not doing that. We're going to follow orders. We're going to win this. And we're going to spread communism all over this great continent. And I'm just like, oh, fuck me. And then the morning of day 6, we get the orders to move. We assault another objective and I get shot just in a weird way. Round ricochets off a rock, hits up under my armor, lacerates my kidney. And I'm just sitting there, just in a lot of pain. I'm questioning every decision I've made in my life. And then I'm like, oh no, I got hit in the kidney. And I just start pissing myself. And there's a lot of ammonia. I haven't showered since I got out here. And this stupid squad leader is like, McGinnis, get up. And I'm like, dude, I can't. And I'm covered in piss now. And there's blood everywhere. And then she just goes, leave them. And then I die in that field. And that'll be it. And I'll spend my last probably hour or 2 bleeding out, wondering why. Why did I do this?
Well, I'll be right beside you. And I'll be like, dude, remember when we did that gooning video?
Yeah.
And then you're like,
my last words are gooning.
Yeah. Roll credits. And that's how the revolution was born.
Yeah, and see, the thing is I find out there's an afterlife, and because I was so and it's based on Catholic theology, so I'm stuck in purgatory because I talk so much shit about the Catholic Church, and I'm just like watching them dispose of my body, and it's like, hey man, they put you in a big hole, and I'm like, what they did? They gave me a grave, and it's just like a big mass grave. And
just thrown in with all these other
fast forward like 15 years, right? When there's, you know, we've essentially balkanized, and there's just this little plaque that says, "Here lies comrades who tried," and I'm just sitting there like, shot in the kidney, bled out, and this is how I'm. Fuck you guys.
Comrade. Well, before we go, let's read some of these. I pinned some comments. Tony Red said, there is no left anymore here, except maybe in this chat room. The so-called left is middle class. Being a cop, for example, is fairly working class job. Kushlook said, you're right, though. Whatever the solution is, it must be confronted in material terms.
Bingo.
It requires dipping a toe into utopian thinking and trying to imagine new solutions. Navi Noob 05 says, great to see you from afar yesterday, Jason. Great discussion. I don't know who you were, but what's up? Maybe I did. I don't know. You did. I didn't. That's not. I didn't meet a Navi Noob at the show. Hey, how you doing, Jason? Navi Noob 05. Look at what Israel is doing in Palestine. That is what the oligarchy is willing to do to us. I think that was the conversation about, what is the.
Yep.
Here we go. The U.S. as a country is set up as a perfect machine of capital. That's what is most excellent about it. It is set up so that nothing ever happens other than accumulating. Oof. Tony Red, we must organize a genuine working class left. Most PMC so-called lefties are not allies and not likely to be. Too often they are part of the problem, no matter how well intentioned. Virtuoso, the post Bernie come down was really bad. Oof.
Virtuoso, the post Bernie come down was like you going out and saying, I'm not touching tequila, then you helped polish off a bottle and you woke up the next morning. That's the Bernie.
That's a very good analogy, in my opinion.
Yeah.
There has to be an invisible sun that gives you hope when the whole day is done. Oh, thanks, Shel Silverstein.
Yeah, well, Del Sol, that's my death on day 6 of the thing. Okay.
No, that's actually we appreciate your journey, Jason. Thanks for sharing. Oh, thank you. Marx and Engels also very explicitly worked out that arrangement where Engels would subsidize Marx because Marx's thought was other level.
Well, Tony, that goes back to what we're saying. Like, honestly, what I was trying to get to, and I got sidetracked because, like, this was a great show for conversation, like ones that needed to happen. We need a bankroll. Like, we need a leftist bankroll. Even if it's just to help with, like, community projects, that would be great. But other than a cornerback for the then San Diego Chargers, I don't really know a leftist that has any money right now.
Who was that cornerback?
I can't remember his name, but he went hard in the paint.
You know the running back guy?
No, he was a corner. But he was like really involved with the formation of like the movement for People's Party. And then when it went off the rails, he was like, nah, fuck all you. You're crazy. I don't want any part of this shit. Take my name off everything.
It was the running back guy, Justin something?
I thought he was a corner.
No, he's a running back.
He's a running back? Well, dude.
Yeah.
All I know is when he saw Door on the bill, he was like, I'm out.
I didn't know that's what got him out. I didn't know.
Oh, yeah. He didn't want any part of that nonsense.
Need to get used to the idea that I can fuck up 9 times out of 10 and have a decent season. Oof. It's very true. Tony, that's because the PMC so-called left thinks a union is a country club. Amber Ailey Frost, what if a Trumpist wants to join? Well, then you win. I believe that's what Amber said. The idea of being a small business owner is a narcotic to Americans, says Isaac. Yeah, it's very true.
Dude, I've actually thought about starting my own business that builds rifles. So, because my boss is at work this week, Jason.
As you want to build rifles. And then we're going to end with this. Mac floats up. This is from JC, by the way. Mac floats up to the light as Norm does a spoken word Negro spiritual. Thank you, guys. Those are the starred comments. Thank you guys for hanging out with Mac and I. We won't be back. We might be back next week. I'm not sure if Pascal is going to be here doing the Mau Mau hour. Not sure yet. Haven't heard from Pascal about that. But I will be back tomorrow with our guest. We'll be talking about the 1979 Greensboro Massacre. As we talk about leftist this, leftist that, let's remember it wasn't that long ago that there was a massacre on leftists in Mac's state of North Carolina.
Yeah.
In my lifetime, 1979, I was alive. So that'll be a very interesting conversation, a sad, dark one, but an important one nonetheless. Also, if you guys haven't checked out the Tuesday show, please do. It was a great talk I had about a month ago with David Burke about metal and theory. As crazy as that sounds, we got into some interesting places with it, especially when we talked about black metal, because here's a fun fact that no one really talks about. Those insane dudes that were all killing each other and burning churches lived in the best, they had the best life, what was the best conditions, the best living conditions for young people in the world, because they were all in the Scandinavian countries. Why did they do that anyway when they had all of their needs met through socialism? That's why that show is an interesting conversation. That being said, I played the wrong music to start the show off. I will play the right music this time to end it. All right.